Smell us now, lady.
Welcome to MeatEater Trivia.
MeatEater Podcast.
Welcome to MeatEater Radio Live. It's 11 a.m. Mountain Time on Thursday, January 16th, and we're live from MeatEater HQ in Bozeman, Montana. I'm your host, Spencer Newarth, joined today by Seth Morris and Corey Calkins. On today's show, we'll interview Joel Collender from Rock Island Auction about some super rare guns that are for sale. Then we'll get a migration report from Matt McCormick, followed by 1 Minute Fishing with Chester in Wisconsin. After that, we'll rank the 3 coolest places we've ever camped. And finally, we'll talk to Phil Musket about one of the most coveted public lands jobs in America. But before we do anything, Corey, I need to issue an apology to you. Do you know why?
No.
There's not a chance you know why. Corey and I were elk hunting in October, and it was a big full moon that night. And I was talking about how I am very entertained by doctors and school teachers and nurses who say that, like, the hospital is the worst place to work on a full moon.
Oh.
Kids are harder to deal with on a full moon. And I said all these studies have shown that that's not true. But I'm glad that they think that that's true. But there's multiple studies that are like, that is not the case. Which Corey said that he sleeps worse on a full moon. And I said, Corey, you fool. There is no chance that's the case. Earlier this week, I was having a tough time falling asleep. Looked out the window, full moon. And so I'm like, was Corey right? So I Googled it. There were like 6 to 10 studies saying that that is the case. People have a harder time falling asleep on a full moon, and they wake up sooner on a full moon. They conducted these studies in South America, in the United States, in rural areas, in urban areas, in laboratories where you didn't even know like what the moon was doing that night. And it's like pretty consistently agreed upon by science that you sleep worse on a full moon. So Corey, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I hate to say I told you so, but I mean, that was just my own life, things I noticed in my life. I mean, there's like, 3 nights in a row where it's almost full.
Happened this week. Did you notice that you slept any worse?
My house has been in shambles. We had a little water leak, so we got fans and dehumidifiers going nuts. So actually, I slept great. But yeah, typically full moon, like my kid doesn't sleep well. My dog's up roaming around, needs to go outside and howl at the moon or something. So yeah, it's typically a rough night to sleep, especially out camping. It's a little bright. And all
Seth,
that.
you ever notice that full moons they mess with you?
Other than just the fact that it's light out,
Yeah.
especially like right now when there's snow cover, I just like
So
I like
Oh, yeah, that makes
darkness.
a huge difference.
Yeah, I like darkness when I sleep. So, but I can't say that I've noticed a difference because of the full moon.
Yeah.
Phil, are your boys rowdier on a full moon, you think?
I don't know. I've never noticed any sort of pattern like that. I know a lot of
few days ago,
astrology people would beg to differ.
A few days ago, were they a real pain in your butt?
Actually, for the first time, they weren't a pain in my butt for a while. So maybe it's like my kids are just the opposite, which, you know.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know.
So,
not
Corey,
werewolves.
going back to our elk camp conversation in October, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you for the apology, I guess. I wonder why that's the case. Must be gravity.
One of the studies I saw said it's actually more rare in children than it affects their sleep. And so it's something that's been baked into us by the time we're adults.
Oh, yeah.
That just messes with you.
Wild. Wild world.
All right, we're going to go to our first interview. Joining us on the line now is Joel Collender from Rock Island Auction, and he's here to show us some legendary guns that are coming up for sale. Joel, welcome to the show.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us on.
First thing, Joel, tell us about what Rock Island Auction is.
The short way to put it is Rock Island Auction House is the #1 auction house in the world for fine and historic firearms. A lot of people associate us with 6 and 7 figure firearms. Those are what we're most known for. But I love coming on shows like this and saying, but there's guns for everybody. I mean, you just want something to go out to the field. You need a pre-64 Winchester Model 70. We're going to have that. We're really catering to collectors at all levels, not just collectors, but people who use these things too.
You mentioned 6 and 7 figure guns. What's the most expensive firearm you've ever sold?
That would be a pair of firearms. That was in May 22. A pair of Remington new models, so percussion revolvers, mint condition, engraved by one of the finest engravers of the century, L.D. Nimschke, and they were presented to Ulysses S. Grant. That pair sold for $5.18 million.
Oh my goodness. 5.18. Is that what you expected those guns to yield?
No, we had I believe a pre-auction estimate between 1 and 3. So we had a 7-figure estimate on it. We knew those were special and above and beyond, not only with the condition and the engraving, that alone would be enough to easily put it 6 figures. Once you start adding those historic figures, a lot of times there's no precedent for that. There's no precedent on, what should a Ulysses S. Grant revolver sell for? So when it comes to auction time, it's sometimes you get some fireworks.
Yeah, it's worth what somebody will pay for it. How many guns a year do you guys move?
Anymore. So we're changing a lot of auction formats, trying to do a lot of new things with online platforms. Currently, just about under 50,000 guns annually.
Okay, wow. 50,000 guns moving through Rock Island Auction. Now, I see that you're wearing some gloves today. I assume that that's so you can delicately handle some of the firearms that you're about to show us. And you've got some guns that are coming up for auction in February. What do you have to share with us?
Sure. Well, these are in our February 21st through 23rd Sporting Collector Firearms Auction. The full catalog's on our website, so people can do that. You don't need to be present, although we certainly encourage people to come. If you're in that Dallas-Fort Worth area, come see the new facility that's in Bedford. We can talk about that later. But one of the ones, when you asked about the most expensive guns, one that was on our list for a long time was a Colt Walker. It's the very, very first revolver with the Colt name actually on it. And we have one of those coming up in February.
Nice.
This is the model 1847. That's when Colt would have started producing the Walkers. Absolute, just as maybe you can tell, just a unit of a revolver. I mean, the cylinder is multiple inches in diameter. These saw hard use. To see them in any condition is absolutely phenomenal. There were only 1,000 made for a military contract, 100 made for the commercial market, and they really, our president Kevin Hogan likes to say, they really gave Samuel Colt the keys to the mint. They opened up doors for him. It was just the start of military contracts, as well as getting, introducing people on a more powerful scale to the repeater, or to a repeating pistol.
For our audience members who are listening to this show, I'd suggest you go over to YouTube and watch this one, because Joel is handling these guns on the camera here. We're going to just get to see all these expensive guns. What was the original price of that gun when it sold?
Well, the 1,000 that were sold to the U.S. government, they sold for $25 a piece and an extra $3 per revolver for accessories and accoutrements.
Wow. Okay. And what do you guys expect it to sell for next month?
The Colt Walkers do set the top of the market. We've sold examples commercially and otherwise for right around 1.8 million. Those are fine condition, all original. But there's still examples out there, and like I mentioned, a range of conditions. I believe we have the estimate at this one at 25 to 50,000. So a really good way for someone who, if you don't want to spend the moon on a Colt Walker, things like this provide a really easy way to do it, to get an original, authentic, Texas Ranger history Colt Walker in their collection.
That is a beast of a gun. I see somebody in the comments of the live chat saying that they would be the unlucky person who would put a dent in one of these things. Out of the 50,000 guns that you guys sell a year, I imagine some accident has happened along the way, right? Where somebody has fumbled a gun and you guys had a little accident there.
We don't have it happen here too much, but again, a lot of the guns that come to us, we have our premier auctions, which are kind of the world class, just the best guns in the world are going to be at our premier auctions. Those you don't see too many on, but the sporting collector auctions or some of our other arms and accessories auctions, there's a lot of really good history in those that aren't in pristine condition. They've been used, they've been there, they've done that, they've seen combat or they've seen the firing range. So, some of them have some marks on it already, and some people prefer that. They'd like a gun that's been there and done that instead of a safe queen or one that missed all the battles. They want something that a Texas Ranger might have had in their holster. So it's like I said, we cater to all levels.
All right, Joel, what else do you have to show us today?
Well, this next one's going to be two hands. One of our most popular videos of all time is me and another gentleman here firing some rifles by J.D. Jones. JD Jones invented like the Whisper line of cartridges, which of course gave rise to 300 Blackout. Famous handgun hunter, famous wildcatter. Also did some rifle cartridges and rifle rounds. And this is one of them. This guy's chambered in 700 JDJ.
Jesus.
Wow.
That'll pack a wallop.
It doesn't even have
wow.
a muzzle brake. Like, that's ambitious. Giant fluted cylinder. Makes these things out of Phoenix. And just no ATF, or it's ATF exempt, so you don't need an ATF letter on a gun like this. The host cartridge is actually made from a 50 BMG brass that's been necked out to accept that 700 caliber cartridge.
How much does that thing weigh, Joel?
Too much. I'm struggling with it now. I mean, this has got to be like 35 pounds.
Jeez.
wow.
Yeah, Joel can't hold that for the whole interview because that is quite the workout. And he can't even fit the whole thing in the frame of his screen. This is another beast of a firearm.
Yeah, you're going to want the weight, frankly, with a round like that. I did some napkin math, and it's about 28,000 foot-pounds of force.
Jeez.
Wow.
Like a 30-06 is generating 2,900 foot-pounds of force.
And what was this gun used for back in the day when people are toting these things around?
Nobody was. That's the good news. Like, it has sling swivels on it, but I don't know for what, because nobody's going to want to carry this. You can see, though, it is in this heavy bench rest stock. So it's really just testing the boundaries of cartridge, which is what JD Jones is doing with the wildcatting and the handgun hunting. He's testing the boundaries for things like that. So target shooting, it's also made for watching your friends shoot it and not you a whole bunch of times. That's probably more entertaining as well.
The kind of guy who would haul that around in their back, I think that's exclusive to someone like Doug Duran. What was the original price on that gun?
That I don't know the original price, but it's pretty modern. So these, the 700 JDJ, that's just developed as recently as 1995. So I don't have the original price on it. Our estimate for that weekend, for the February auction, will be $14,000 to $22,500. These big bores are becoming more desirable all the time. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it float a little higher than that.
Okay, and that thing, you could shoot it if you bought that, right? That's
Absolutely.
one that you take out to the range?
Absolutely. It comes with a bunch of solids. So it comes with copper solids and soft points, as well as the dies. And you would laugh if you saw the reloading dies for this. They're just comically large.
Yeah. All right, and what's the last gun you have to show us today?
Last gun, kind of a classic. Got ourselves a Sharps. In fact, I'll flip it around so you can see the good side.
Oh, that's
Sharps
beautiful.
1874. And if you love, 19th century American hunting or even Civil War history, boy, a Sharps is the way to go. I mean, pre-Civil War history, Civil War, and in the 1870s, like this one, you come into those American bison hunts and all the hunting that was going on there. The Sharps were extremely popular for that. They come in a variety of calibers and sizes and lengths, and they were going to configure them just about any way you wanted it. So they're popular for that reason, and great for collectors. So if you want to collect a variety of them, you can sure find them.
And so when that gun was on the market in the 1870s, do you know what the selling price was?
A base model gun, so again, short barrel, short octagon barrel, and no kind of extra features, right around $35.
And what do you think it's going to sell for next month?
Well, let me check the estimate on that guy. We have it at $7,500 to $9,500.
Okay, $35 in the
not fancy stock, but we do have a half octagon, half round barrel. Not as many of those produced. The full round barrels are the rarest, the least produced out of the model 1874. But like I said, great model. It's kind of got its fame with the Quigley Down Under movies. So that was in 1874, and in the same chambering as well, in the 45-110.
$35 gives me a little sticker shock for 1874.
Right.
I'd assume that thing would be half of that price.
Yeah.
Joel, if some listener is interested in one of these guns, how do they make a bid?
RockIslandAuction.com, best way to do it. You can set it up where you just set in a sealed bid. You tell us what your max is. You can also request just right on the website to get a phone call. You can bid live via phone in the auction. You just click a button and one of our folks will call you maybe 5 lots before the auction or before that lot comes up and says, hey, This is Joel with Rock Island Auction Company. Let's talk about this gun a little bit and what your plans are for it. So any number of ways to bid. I like to joke at just about, we'll take a bid anyway, except for a smoke signal.
Okay, and it is pretty painless. Rock Island Auction is actually where we bought our punt gun, and I've heard rumors in the office that it may get fired next month. So
finally.
if you're in the Gallatin Valley and you hear a big old boom someday, you'll know what was going on. Joel, I had saw in an email recently that there was a gun you were supposed to tell Phil about that was once upon a time in your auction house.
Phil, we set a Guinness Book World Record for the most expensive movie prop firearm ever sold, and that was for the Han Solo DL-44 blaster.
Oh, nice! You beat me to the DL-44. I was going to come in with that name, but no. Yeah, that sounds great. Where was I for this? How could I have gotten a notification?
Great question. We told a few people about it, but it went for just over $1 million, and so it's.
You know what? I take it back, Joel. I take it all back.
You could have had that easy.
$1 million.
Wow. The bidding's free. It's just the winning gets a little expensive.
That's a great point.
Yeah. All right, Joel. Well, we're definitely going to check in with you later this year to see what other cool guns you guys have at the auction house. Already looking forward to that next interview. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Thanks very much.
Have a good one, Joel.
Thanks, Joel.
All right, our next segment is the Migration Report.
When you can't find food and the temps are so low, then you suffer. All right. Duck migration is the way.
The Migration Report is where Matt McCormick gives a waterfowl hunting forecast for each flyway. Take it away, Matt.
Hey guys, I'm Matt McCormick with Flying V, and welcome to the MeatEater Migration Report for January 16th, 2025. It's been a little while since we've done one of these, and for good reason. We've been hunting hard, and as you can see here in the Pacific Flyway of Montana, which is where I am right now, we are all the way snowed in, iced up, and the birds are pushing. We ended our season on January 10th, and let me tell you, it was a banger of an ending, and those birds on the front end of this storm pushed all the way down into Utah, down to the Sac Valley. Everybody in the Pacific Flyway had a hell of a season this year, so kudos to everybody that was able to get out and do some hunting in the Pacific Flyway. In the Central Flyway, some seasons are starting to close, same with Mississippi, but as we're pushing south, and if you've been paying attention, there are birds pouring out of the north down to the south on the front and back end of this recent storm. I see you guys got some snow down there. Talked to some guys. You guys are getting massive pushes of birds as we dive into these last few weeks of the season. So if you're looking to get out and do some hunting, find a state that's open, hit the road with your buddies. If you're in one of those states that's still open, good luck, have fun with these last few weeks, because in about a month or so, all of you, including myself, are going to be wishing that season was still open. We're going to hit the road tomorrow, go find some birds somewhere else because we just can't handle it. And hey, it's hunting season, boys. It's still here. So get in the truck, go find birds, and keep hunting. Good luck, and be safe.
Now, I believe that is the last migration report we'll have for the year. But for more waterfowling content from Matt and Flying V, be sure to go watch their show on the MeatEater YouTube channel. A new episode just dropped today. Corey, Seth, you boys take advantage of the final stretch of the Montana season here, or no?
I did actually got out like for the first time this year in the last week or so.
How'd that go?
It was good. Got a couple birds, not many.
Okay.
Weren't taking it too serious. But just something to do on the weekends.
What was the hunt like? You were just like wading down some stream?
Yeah,
nearby,
just local public stuff around here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing fancy.
You saving those ducks then for a special occasion, or what are you going to do with them?
We ate some of them already.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we usually don't let them things sit around too long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My wife loves them, so if we have ducks, we're eating them.
Pretty fatty too, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're delicious.
All right, let's take a break for some listener feedback. Phil, What's the chat have to say?
Yeah, well, I see that Dr. Randall and Steven Ranella are both in the chat currently. So, hey, gentlemen, if you have a question for the crew, feel free to drop it in right now. Mitchell has a question for Spencer, and you can be as specific or non-specific as you like, but he says this is his first year hunting in South Dakota as a resident. What West River zone do you think I should try putting in for?
Well, if this is your first year, then I assume that means you have 0 points and you are going to be quite limited, Mitchell. To draw like a pretty quality unit in Western South Dakota as a resident, you probably need 3 or 4 points. What I would say is probably just avoid Gregory County. If this is your first time going West River, you're probably going to be drawn to that zone when you look at a public land map and see your draw odds. That unit has an incredibly low retention rate because people get fooled by the reasons I just said. And then they go there and they're super disappointed and they never go back again. And you may think at that point, oh, that's what it's like to hunt Western South Dakota. So I would say just plan on drawing some preference points, make a quality trip in like 2027, and for this first year in 2025, just don't do Gregory County.
Sounds good. I'm actually curious about this because I don't know how I don't think any of you guys are much of waterfowl people as far as I know, but Eric's asking with duck season coming to a close and after that migration report, does any of the gang have a good waterfowl story from this season?
I hunted 0 waterfowl.
That's what I thought.
Corey?
I'm too big of a skier to waterfowl hunt. When I get old, I'll waterfowl hunt. That's how I always say.
I photographed a waterfowl hunt this year with Max Sparta, and it was phenomenal. That dude is just a ducky dude. And he did a bunch of scouting and found this spot, this spring pond that ducks were flying to between there and like a grain elevator that had some spilt grain laying around. And Max knocked on some doors and it was just a phenomenal, 1,000 ducks over your head in the morning.
Wow.
And you didn't have a gun in your hand. You had a camera.
Nope, I had a camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
I bet they're amazing shots, though.
Oh, they're great. As always.
Yeah.
Let's see. Jova and Figueroa. I don't know. Thoughts about passing off venison as something else when cooking. People like to joke that you can't tell the difference between beef and venison. He says he's against it, but his wife is not. Have you ever done this before?
I wouldn't openly misdirect someone and say it's beef. But if I feel like someone would be hesitant to eat it, I maybe wouldn't volunteer that it's venison. I don't know. There's plenty of good ways to make venison where it doesn't matter what kind of red meat it is, specifically with a ground meat recipe. You can get away with damn near anything, and it doesn't matter that it came off a whitetail rather than a cow.
Yeah, I love having people over for dinner that are wishy-washy about eating wild game, and then just not telling them what it is.
Yeah.
And then them eating it and being like, "Oh, this is delicious." And then I tell them.
Yeah, it blows my mind
It's
how
great.
folks would rather eat a Walmart cow steak versus a wild deer.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them.
There are.
Yeah. I feel like the people who are against it are more so they had a bad experience when they were a kid, and their dad cooked their venison steaks to a well done,
hockey
which
pucks.
Of course no one's gonna like that. If that's all the exposure you had for a while, just show them how dang good venison could be without lying to them.
I'm not sure why this is directed at you, Seth, but I'm curious. Seth, can you eat the velvet from deer antlers? Have you guys ever done that before?
I don't know why that's directed towards me either. Never even thought about doing it.
I think deer eat it. I feel like
deer do
see
eat it.
photos when they're shedding their velvet, they'll eat it.
Yep.
There was also famously Ray Lewis, the linebacker, Hall of Famer from the Baltimore Ravens. He got busted with, I think it was a banned substance at the time. If it wasn't a banned substance, they were going to make it banned, but it was a deer antler spray, which I don't know how that was applied, if it's oral or if you have an inflamed knee, so you spray it there. But
Interesting.
Deer eat their own velvet. So I think you could do it too.
Didn't your wife kill a cactus buck covered in velvet?
Yeah, she did.
I wonder if that's what they're referring to.
But you did
Maybe. No, we didn't eat it. It's still on the antlers.
They always say you can't eat the antlers, but maybe you can if they're in velvet.
Did you, when you got that mounted, did they strip it off and reapply it, or did they freeze dry it?
I think they...
Not freeze dry, but like flash freeze.
Yeah, I think they stripped it and reapplied it.
Uh-huh.
Which... I don't know how that works, but
I also killed a velvet buck. That one, they just like did a flash freeze on it. And it's held real good. It doesn't smell at all. There was a couple spots where it was starting to peel a little bit, and I noticed that will peel like an extra 1/8 of an inch every 2 years.
Oh, really?
Without it ever being handled. So I imagine, when I'm old and gray, that thing is going to be peeling a little more. But for right now, it's holding real well.
I one time in Pennsylvania was shed hunting and found a shed antler that was still in like full velvet. It was peeling off in places, and it was cold outside, so I just like picked up, was like, "Oh, this is cool," and then like brought it in the house.
Yeah,
not think like because I couldn't smell it; it was just like frozen,
it's live flesh on there.
And I brought it in the house, and once it thawed out, it was just the most miserable smelling thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I imagine you handled it the same way when Kelsey killed her cactus buck. But when I killed my cactus buck, threw the whole head in the freezer until I could get it to the taxidermist.
Yep. Yeah, we took it like right away.
Yeah.
So
Steve says that question was directed at you, Seth, because it looks like you need some help. I don't know what that means.
Thanks.
Yeah, Steve Brunella is in the chat today, as well as Randall Williams. And I know Randall was saying something before our show today that the Sharps rifle plays a heavy role in their upcoming Mountain Man History Project. Maybe Randall can tell you more in the chat about that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And we'll do one more here. Dr. Randall Williams is asking about the streamathon. Great question, Randall. For those of you who didn't hear Phil Trivia, I proposed a 24-hour stream of Red Dead Redemption 2 to raise money for the MeatEater Land Access Initiative. Unfortunately, the person in charge of content is on paternity leave right now, and I'm very disappointed he didn't drop everything he was doing, including his baby, to come tell me what the best idea that was. But I'm still fighting for it. I'm gonna pitch it officially at the next round of pitches that come through. So I've got faith. I have faith. Thank you for that question, Randall.
All right, our next segment is 1 Minute Fishing.
Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? Go ahead. Make my cast.
1 Minute Fishing is where we go live to someone who's fishing and they have 1 minute to catch a fish. And if they're successful, we'll make a $500 donation to a conservation group. This week, our angler is Chester Floyd, who's on a frozen lake in Wisconsin, and he's fishing for a donation to Muskies, Inc. Chester, welcome to the show.
Hello. It's windy as all heck out here.
It looks cold, too.
Oh, man.
And I'm cold. But we're having fun.
Chester is the first person in the history of 1 Minute Fishing to join us on the hard water. Tell us about what you're after today, Chester.
Well, we're really after some bluegill, but they're not biting. So we switched to baby little perch. So I hope that's what I catch here.
And how long have you been on the ice today?
About an hour.
And how many fish have you caught?
30.
Oh, okay. So there's a chance. I thought the answer was going to be 3.
How many beers have you drank, Chet?
None. It's a work day.
Oh, come on.
But it's lunchtime.
Wait, you're in Wisconsin and you're fishing.
And Chester is
Say hi to my brother Ike.
Oh, brother Ike.
What's up, Ike? Ike, famous from the 18-inch wheel song. Chester stole your bike.
And the sturgeon spearing episode with Giannis.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's a cookie guy. Yeah.
And Chester has the camera very tight on his face. You almost can't even see both of his ears. I think he's trying to hide his location so nobody goes out there and catches his baby little perch that he's after.
When do you guys want to do this?
Well, Chester's getting real cold. I imagine his fingers are getting frostbitten. First thing, Chester, tell us about what you're doing to try to catch one of these perch. What tactics we using?
Looks like it involves a live scope. Ooh. Oh, no, that's a camera.
Yeah, that's just down in 2D sonar. We don't really need it. Literally, we're just in weeds. And there's little perch everywhere. So I hope they're there right now.
And
we're
what are you
using a
dropping down there? A little waxy worm or what?
waxworm and a little tungsten jig. Yep.
Okay, Chester, hand that phone over to Ike, and your 1 minute of fishing starts as soon as that waxy worm hits the water.
Okay, I'll say wait.
Okay, he's picking up his rod. He's showing the camera. That is bait for a little itty bitty fish.
Guys,
And we're ready. We're ready. Go for it. All right, the worm is in the water. Your 60 seconds starts now.
I'm on the edge of my seat already.
We've only had a few successful anglers in the history of 1 minute fishing. Pat Durkin. We are 13 seconds in, and he pulled up a perch that I would say, if I described it as 4 inches long, that would be generous. Show us that fish, Chester.
Chester!
Wow.
20 seconds?
That was
Yeah,
13,
like 13
seconds.
seconds.
Oh my gosh.
13 seconds.
I knew
Chester caught a little perch to make a donation to Muskies Inc. Well done, Chester.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Are you going to eat that thing?
He's
No,
allergic.
it's back. Back in at work. Kind of catching. Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, he's running.
Oh, he's running to
dramatic.
another hole.
Is it a tip up?
What are you running to, Chester?
Where these bluegills are on the ice.
Okay.
Oh,
he's
yeah,
gonna,
let's
he's
see
gonna
the
show us the hot bluegill bite.
Should this
that
just
he's
be the
had
whole
so far.
show? Like, apologies
No,
to whatever we had
this
coming up
is,
next.
Oh yeah.
This is like the size, you know?
Perfect.
You're keeping
Gosh, I'm
those.
cold.
Okay. All right. We will see you later, Chester. Thank you for joining us. Congrats on getting that $500 donation for Muskies Inc.
Nice job, buddy.
Good work, Chad.
See you guys.
Man, it looked like it could have been 20 or 30 below zero with the wind chill.
Yeah, Chester makes it look colder, and I
Maybe.
trust that it was very cold out there.
Sound cold.
Incredible stuff.
Wow. There we
Yeah,
go.
That was great content.
I think our third successful angler for 1 minute fishing. We had Pat Durkin, we had Yanni in Louisiana, and now Chester Floyd joins the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
All right, our next segment is top threes.
Sorry, this one is so long.
It's the other way, Phil. You should apologize for the ones that are short.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's a real treat.
Oh, that's not the right thing. There we
All right,
are.
this week we are ranking the 3 coolest places we've ever camped. Corey, you go first. What's the 3rd coolest place you've ever camped?
The 3rd coolest place I've ever camped would have to be in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. I used to guide back in the Bob. We'd run fishing pack trips. They were 6-day pack trips. We joked that we were professional campers back there because we were helping other folks get back there, obviously, and get out successfully without getting hurt. That was our biggest goal, in and out. I did the math over 8 years of running those trips. I did 340 to 360 days back in the wilderness, camping,
Wow.
sleeping on the ground under a tarp if it was threatening rain. But yeah, that's a picture of me when I was a cook back there, a
How old
wilderness
were you?
chef. I would have been 20 years old probably in that photo.
20 years old.
You look to be about 13 in that photo.
Oh, bud.
Couldn't even enjoy a beer yet in that photo.
There's a pile of baby back ribs and some, looks like baked beans.
beans,
Bush's baked beans, of course.
Nice.
Yeah, there's a photo of me with the river in the background. I'm probably schmegging dishes in the river.
Schmegging? I've never heard that term before.
Yeah, just giving it a quick schmeg
Okay.
in the water just to get the food off.
do you schmeg your dishes at home, or
I
is that
do.
exclusively when you're outside?
No, I schmeg before they go in the dishwasher.
Okay.
It helps
All
your
right.
dishwasher out.
I'm gonna
Nobody else
start using
schmegs.
that. I mean, I think I do, but I don't say it that way.
I don't have a dishwasher. So,
Oh,
Seth is
It's
your
your
dishwasher. Yeah.
yeah, you got to schmeg.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, by far, top 3.
3rd coolest place was right here in Montana then.
Yep.
Yeah. And if seeing those cool guns that Joel was showing us earlier wasn't enough to get you to come over to YouTube and watch, we're going to be showing you pictures of the coolest places that we've ever camped as well, and maybe in some cases video. All right, Seth, what's the third coolest place that you've ever camped?
So my third coolest place is along the Missouri River, also in Montana. This was the view basically right outside my tent. But you can kind of see there in the background, there's an old homestead. I don't know the history of it, but would love to know. But this was like one of the most peaceful. It was like in the spring, everything's green. It was like one of the most peaceful camp spots I've ever slept at.
Yeah,
looks like it.
And it wasn't like a designated camp spot. It's just like off a 2-track. Turkeys were gobbling. Coyotes were running around just outside of camp there. It was just a cool spot to be in after like a long, hard winter in Montana. And it's cool to just lay there at night just thinking about like Lewis and Clark saw that country, that exact country that I was sleeping in.
And so much of the Missouri River today looks very different than how it looked 100 years ago or 200 years ago. But that part of the river, that looks like it did when Lewis and Clark came floating through.
Yep. So
how are the skeeters?
At night, they were not great.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Pretty green in that photo.
Yeah.
Lots of sage.
All right, the third coolest place I've ever camped is Death Valley in California. It was March of 2023. That's the hottest place in North America. It's the biggest national park in the lower 48. Went there on a weekday, so it felt like we had the whole place to ourselves, me and my wife. That picture you're seeing there, that's the sailing stones. And that's at the racetrack playa. Those are rocks that move on their own. No human is helping them create that giant skid mark behind it. It's all about ice and water and wind that pushes these things around this dried lake bed. And you can see I'm in shorts and a t-shirt there. It was blazing hot at that time, but you got like the full effect of being in the desert because by that night it was freezing cold. And there were no moon. There's no moon that night. The stars were super bright. And a good barometer when you're camping and when you're stargazing is if you can see the Seven Sisters. If it's a good stargazing that night, if it's a good stargazing night. And the Seven Sisters that night were so vivid. I'd never seen anything like it. It felt like every other time I'd seen the Seven Sisters in my life, that was wrong. And in Death Valley that night, that was the correct way to view the Seven Sisters. And there was no moon out, which makes for better stargazing. So Phil's got some more photos there. Yeah, that was only a few hours after I was in the shorts and a t-shirt at the racetrack playa. And we were camping in the national park, which you can't do a lot of in national parks where you're dispersed camping. Dispersed camping would be what we were just talking about, where you're not in a designated camping spot.
Yep.
Death Valley, because it's so big and remote, they allow you to do some dispersed camping, and that's what we did. The unique thing about that trip too, we were on a road trip. We were on a 7-day road trip, me and my wife. And the next day we were going to Phoenix from there. We were camping in Death Valley the night before the clocks changed for daylight savings, but we didn't have cell signal for like 24 hours. So the clocks changed that night. We come out of the park. We're heading to Arizona because we're going to Phoenix, who does not recognize daylight savings.
Oh, yeah.
They're also crossing a time zone going into Arizona. So my brain was totally in a pretzel, trying to figure out what time I was going to get to Phoenix. I didn't know if it was going to be 5 p.m. or 10 p.m.
Oh, wow.
Just because, again, daylight savings happened, didn't have cell service, crossing a time zone, going into a state that doesn't even do daylight savings. It felt like a mess.
I'd have to ask Siri.
Yeah, but we got there.
For sure.
All right, the second coolest place you've ever camped, Corey.
Second coolest place I've ever camped would have to be on Cumberland Island off the coast of Georgia. In 2013, my wife and I booked a reservation. Cumberland Island's part of the National Seashore National Park System. So only 300 people are allowed on the island a day, and X amount of people, I forget how many, are allowed to camp.
Is that a gator or a croc in your photo?
I think it's a gator.
Okay.
And a wild horse. Well,
Yeah.
wild horse in the background. But as a kid from Montana, used to seeing the horses, obviously, but seeing the gators and the teeny tiny little ticks on there, the Spanish moss covering all the trees was really cool. There's a lot of amazing American history on that island. I don't need to bore everybody with that.
How'd you get to the island?
You have to take a ferry.
Okay.
Yep, from St. Mary's, Georgia.
And hauling your own camping gear there?
Yep. So we just had everything in our backpacks. Water, like drinking water is tricky, so you want to carry around some water. There's a couple spigots of fresh water, but obviously you're along the ocean, so you got to be careful what you drink. So yeah, I highly recommend it.
I'm going to steal Seth's question. How are the mosquitoes?
Mosquitoes, non-existent.
Okay.
Yeah, we were there in late April, I think. But the ticks, I mean, I'm used to the bigger ticks we have here in Montana. Teeny tiny little ticks. Like if you left the zipper open on your tent long enough, they just crawl right in there and then they're on you. But so, otherwise, it was amazing.
Seth, second coolest place you've ever camped?
My number 2, also in Montana. It wasn't so much the place. It was just kind of what we saw that night, one of the nights while we were out there camping. This is a deer camp in November in Montana. But actually, Chester and his brother Ike were here at the moment this photo was shot. But we were kind of just sitting around the campfire at night, and someone got up to take a leak or something, and because you can't really see the sky too well, like around the campfire, someone got up and was like, "Hey, I think I can see the northern lights." And we all jumped up and went away from the fire, and it was just like a beautiful Northern Lights show that night.
Wow.
Out on the plains in eastern Montana. It's just like one of my favorite places.
And it looks like you were successful. I see some animals.
Oh yeah. We I think almost everyone filled their tag on that trip. It was a good hunt.
Yeah, beautiful photo Seth is showing us. You can see the Northern Lights and every star in the sky.
Is that the Seven Sisters I can see above to the right of the tent?
Oh, you know what I think it is?
That
if you don't know what
cluster?
the Seven Sisters is, go take a look online about the Seven Sisters. And you've certainly seen it before, but maybe you didn't know what you were looking at. But again, that's a good way to judge just how good the stargazing is how good you can see the Seven Sisters. And I think Seth was just showing it off in his photo there. Wow. All right, the second coolest place I've ever camped was the Valley of the Gods in Utah. And this was just this last September. That day I visited Monument Valley in Arizona, and where I'm sitting there on this highway is where Forrest Gump famously stopped running. That was where he had his whole posse behind him, and he stood right where I'm sitting, and he said, "I'm pretty tired.
I'm getting pretty
I'll
tired.
go home now." And so that's where he delivered that line, and that is Monument Valley behind me, which is in Arizona. But the place that I had camped was in the Valley of the Gods, and that's part of the Bears Ears National Monument that you hear a lot of talk about when it goes from one presidency to the next based on what they do to that bit of public lands. Where we camped, you need 4-wheel drive to get there and a high clearance vehicle, and that keeps out a whole lot of folks. And Valley of the Gods was so cool. I would rank it over the Grand Canyon as far as just like pretty places that I've seen. So getting to camp there and be among all that was real special. And again, that's more dispersed camping. You don't need a reservation somewhere. You just pull off on a road. And opposite of when I camped in Death Valley, it was a full moon that night, and it just really lit up the Valley of the Gods. And so you could see every butte and every mesa long after the sun went down. I took that photo, I don't know, probably around midnight.
Wow,
yeah,
really?
You can see everything that's happening miles off in the distance.
That's cool.
All right, Corey, the coolest place you've ever camped?
The coolest place I've ever camped would had to have been in Iceland underneath the Eyjafjallajökull volcano.
Oh!
While it was erupting.
Sounded like you said that correctly. I wouldn't know any different.
I hope I didn't butcher
it. Do it again.
Eyjafjallajökull.
Wow.
Wow, it sounds legit.
That, but I mean, when you camp under it, you better know the damn name of it.
Is it erupting all the time?
I don't believe it's always erupting, but
Okay.
in 2010, if anybody remembers, it erupted from March to June, I believe, off and on, and it disrupted the entire globe. Like flights from Europe through Asia, and I think almost all the way into the U.S. were disrupted from the ash cloud that came from it.
Wow.
But I circumnavigated the island. It's called the Ring Road, Highway 1, for 4 weeks, spent on the road hitchhiking my way around Iceland. It was an amazing time. Highly recommend just visiting if you can get there for a long weekend, but I spent a month there, and I hitchhiked for half the way, and then the second half...
Hitchhiked?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, I had heard that it was one of the friendliest places in the world.
Okay.
So hitchhiking is a very easy way to get around. I mean, the locals are amazing. Lots of farmers just moving from town to town.
Yeah.
So it was actually very easy to get on Highway 1, stick out your thumb, and make it to the next town.
Really?
And then there's hostels everywhere, so it was really easy. There's a photo of me with... most people know Doritos, or most Americans would know Doritos as the Cool Ranch in the blue bag, but in Europe, or at least in Iceland, I'm assuming Europe, they're called Cool American Doritos.
Cool American, just like Corey.
Yeah,
Cool American.
I was very confused.
Holding the bag of Cool American Doritos.
And then this is me in front of the Phallological Museum. To the layman's, that's the Penis Museum in Iceland. Highly recommend if you make it to the island.
Did you wind up in any sketchy situations hitchhiking around for a month?
No, not at all. No, it was so easy. I would do it again.
Did it make you think about picking people up on the side of the road back here in the States?
Oh, not in the States.
No, okay.
No. But I rented a car on the second half and then was able to camp in that scene right underneath the volcano. I woke up to it erupting. There was lightning and it sounded like cannons going off underneath it.
Whoa, that's cool.
It was wild. I didn't pick up any hitchhikers because I never saw any, but I certainly would have.
You were willing.
Totally.
All right, Seth, see if you can top that. The coolest place you've ever camped.
My number one is in Alaska on a Dall sheep hunt with Steve and his brother, Danny. We camped up on this like finger ridge coming down from the main ridge the one night, and below us, that's just that whole valley is just a huge glacier. And the cool thing about camping by that glacier, and there was a couple nights where we camped closer to it than this, but
so is that water behind you, or that's the glacier?
That's just ice.
Damn.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That glacier made the craziest noises all night long.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Constantly moving.
Just like big pieces sloughing off and smacking the valley floor, and just it like popping and just making crazy like moaning noises is wild.
Anyone who's ice fished knows what Seth is talking about, or those sorts of noises that might wig you out if you're new to ice fishing. I can't imagine what a glacier sounds like compared to that.
It was cool. And then this photo, Phil, if you zoom in, there's two white dots right behind Steve there. We woke up the one morning, there was some Dall sheep below us.
Wow.
Not legal, but it was cool to wake up to that. And then the next photo there, Phil, is just the valley. This is from where we camped, looking up valley.
Amazing. All right. I don't think I can beat either one of those, but the coolest place I've ever camped was off Cape Flattery in Washington. And Cape Flattery is the northwesternmost part of the lower 48. If you look at a map and you see that little point that's way on the edge of Washington, that's Cape Flattery. And from there, you're standing on a cliff that's like a 270-degree view around you. You were just on the edge of the United States. So we visited that, and then we couldn't camp there because that's a reservation, but we did camp down the road. And on our way out of the reservation, stopped in some small town and bought some smoked salmon from someone's smoke shed. And then this is where I pulled my truck right onto the beach and camped there.
Nice.
And just listen to the waves all night. And I wish I could bring that home with me. I've since then tried to listen to waves crashing on Spotify or something. Just not the same.
Yeah.
So that was probably the coolest spot I've ever camped. And then you could sit there and watch the ships come in at night and try to figure out what is that thing carrying? Oh, that's a cruise ship. Or that one, is 3 times as long as any boat I've ever seen in my life. That was fun to watch. All right, that is the end of the top 3s, and we have one interview left for today. Joining us on the line next is Phil Musket, the president of the Association of Licensed Battlefield Guides. Phil is here to talk about being a guide at Gettysburg, which is one of the most competitive public lands jobs in America. Phil, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for having me.
Doing good.
Thank you for
First
having
thing, Phil, explain to us why being a guide at Gettysburg is such a coveted job.
Well, this is the mecca of the American Civil War. So we get thousands of visitors. We get about 900,000 visitors a year, which is down from the 2 million we used to get. But people come here to learn, and people come here and they hear the stories of the men who fought here, and it sparks a fire in them. And these people continue to come back, and they find out about guiding, and they're like, hey, I can do that. So they want to aspire to be a licensed battlefield guide and spend the rest of their lives on the battlefield telling the stories of those men who fought here.
And to be a guide there, you have to pass a very thorough test. I read a quote recently in a Wall Street Journal article from a lawyer saying that the Gettysburg guide test was harder than the bar exam. Will you walk us through what the testing process is?
Yeah, I sure will. So I've also heard it's as hard as the Harvard entrance exam, but it's a 4-tier process, a 4-step process. The first step is a written exam, which is fill in the blanks, recognizing pictures and writing out what that is. That's the first part of the test. That's 3 hours. And then part 2 is essays. And you've got 5 essay choices, and you've got to write 3. You've got 3 hours to get that done too. Wow. You're taking this exam. This past one we just did, we had 52 people taking the test. As of today, which is after the exam, we only advanced 20 out of those 150 plus.
And
the class,
and how many of those 20? Sorry, Phil. How many of those 20 will end up passing?
Maybe 5.
5
maybe
of them
6
will end up passing. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, because the second step is a panel interview, because it's great. You know all that knowledge, but you got to get it from here to where people can understand it. So that weeds out a lot of people as well too. Step 3 is what they call the field practicum. You spend 3 days working with a mentor who is a guide, and you will write up your 2-hour test your 2-hour tour that you're going to give to people when they visit. You give that to the mentor and practice that. They also drop you on a place in the battlefield, i.e. Little Round Top, and tell us what happened here. You got 5 minutes, and see how well you do. And if you pass that, then you get into the oral examination, which is you could go around with your mentor, all right, until they feel you're ready, and then you schedule with the National Park Service superintendent, and you get 2 shots to go around the battlefield. It's 25 square miles, and you got 2 hours and 15 minutes to tell the story. So all of that minutia you learned past tier 1 is out the window, because you can't fit all that in. So you got to tailor it down to where it's still a story where you're telling the basics. You get 2 shots at that. If you pass that, you become a guide. If you fail that, you start all over again.
Another important detail from that Wall Street Journal article was it said that the test hadn't been offered in 7 years. So it's not like 5 people per year pass this thing. It's 5 people almost once a decade pass this thorough test to be a guide at Gettysburg.
Now, back when I passed the exam back in 2010, they were doing it every 2 years. And they were on that schedule until 2017. And then for whatever reason, the Park Service did not do the exam until we got down. We're down to 130 guides. When I started out, we had 156. So we're losing numbers, and we need new blood. So we finally got this new exam, and we're hoping we get more than 5. And we're hoping, the Association of Battlefield Guides, we're hoping that this will start on another regular 2-3 year cycle like it used to be, to replace the average age of the guide force right now is 72. I'm keeping it down. I'm 57. I'm keeping it down. So
Okay.
I'm doing my part. It's. Go ahead.
With the stakes being so high, have you ever heard of somebody cheating?
I have not heard of anybody physically cheating and being escorted out. I'm sure it's happened, but I'm not familiar with it. What I have witnessed is, people sitting at the table and they're looking over. Now, if they're writing the same thing down, the person, I don't know, but that's the limit of what I've seen as cheating, because not only are you're trying to become a guide, but you're also, it's kind of a competition with you as well too. It's an internal thing. How well can I do on this exam? So, yep.
What are some examples, Phil, of people uprooting their lives for a chance to take this test?
Well, we've got people from all over the country that are currently guides, and one of our guides, he's a lawyer out in San Francisco. And when he was studying to be a guide, he would fly in. He'd do his reading out there and his walk in the battlefield when he'd come here and hanging out with friends and spending the days on the battlefield. And once he passed the test and became a guide, he still works in San Francisco, and he'll fly out here and spend a month or two out here doing tours, then go back to San Fran and work. We've got other guides. We had a Ohio State trooper for a while. Basically, he'd drive in on the weekends, do some tours, go back, do his job. So another example I thought of yesterday was we used to have a nurse who worked down in Tampa, Florida. And he would come up here for a month straight. And at that time, we had quotas. So we had to do so many tours a year. And he would do his 90 tours in 30 days. So he was doing buku tours all at once. And then he'd go back to Florida and work. He used all of his vacation to come here and give a tour, give those tours. So it
must be a pretty rewarding gig for how badly people want to do it. But what's your favorite part of the job?
Well, my favorite part of the job is sharing the stories. Taking people out on the field, spending 2 hours with them. That's the bare minimum tour. So, and putting people in places where important events happened. I enjoy that. People with ancestors coming here and being able to take those descendants to where their ancestor was fought, where he might have been killed, where he might have been captured, things like that. That is what, I enjoy doing. And even with our school groups, we have school groups come in. We jokingly sometimes call March California month because we get a whole bunch of California kids coming in. We get to tell these kids the stories, and maybe that'll spark some interest in their lives, and that'll bring the next generation into guiding and the Civil War and history of America. So
yeah, and Gettysburg is like 6,000 acres, all of which is managed by the Park Service. What can you tell us about the wildlife and conservation work that takes place there?
Well, what we got here, we've got a big deer population, which they do every year. They'll have a big deer hunt here. Now, what they do is only federal employees are authorized to participate. So they come out here and they thin out the herd because it damages the vegetation around here and the local farmers' crops. But then they take all of the meat that they get and they donate it to the local shelters here in the South Central Pennsylvania area. So it goes to a good cause. Our current controversy on the battlefield deals with beavers. We've got some beaver dams in front of Little Round Top, which was a marshy area during the battle on July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1863. But now we got these little ice skating rinks now this time of year. So we're dealing with that. And the Park Service, they can't do anything to remove the beavers until they start to damage the asset. And they've done some mitigations which have worked, so the beavers are staying, much to the chagrin of many historians. We've got a bald eagle that's seen around here periodically. We got a whole bunch of hawks, which they're fun to watch too. Watch them dive bomb onto a field mouse or something. That's really amazing. Occasionally we get a black bear in here coming down off South Mountain, which y'all would call a hill, but that type of thing. The park maintains the tree lines as best they can to what it was at the time of the battle. So they're constantly working on keeping that and then the landscape correct, even down to the fence rails and fence lines that were here during the battle. So all of that stuff they do here.
Yeah, that's great. Last question, Phil. Is your last name really Musket?
It really is. That's what my daddy gave me all those years ago. And I have actually had a guy on a bus argue with me, and I had to pull out my military ID and show him that. I mean, he was just adamant. I had people that have made bets, and at the end of the tour, they've settled their bet by asking that question. Oh yeah, I get it all the time. We got a Chris Army here. We got a Steve Slaughter as well too.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. We used to have an Andy Custer, but she got married. So now it's Andy Donahue. Yeah, but we had a Custer for a while as well too. So
there's some destiny involved, and maybe that helps you pass the test at the end when your last name is Musket or Custer.
Oh yeah. You know, at least you got to get one question right. Yeah.
Well, Phil, thank you for guiding us through what it takes to be a guide and joining us on MeatEater Radio.
Okay, and anytime you're out, check out Gettysburg Tours Guide, GettysburgTourGuides.org. All right, we'll set you up.
We're going to do that.
Get you a tour guide and get you out on the battlefield.
Thank you, Mr. Musket.
Thanks, Phil.
Seth, you grew up, I don't know how far from Gettysburg, but in the same state. You ever been?
Yeah, so I when I started college, I got my forestry degree from Penn State Mont Alto, which is a branch campus of Penn State, which it used to be the Pennsylvania Forest Academy, which was started by Gifford Pinchot. But anyway, that college is not far from Gettysburg.
Okay.
And like he mentioned, South Mountain, the bear coming down from South Mountain. We used to do all sorts of like forestry classes and stuff on South Mountain. And, so I know the area well. And I've only actually been to Gettysburg like a handful of times, just like I think three or four times, something like that. But when I was younger in elementary school, my grandparents took me down there and we did like a motor tour.
Okay.
Like we bought it was at the time it was a cassette tape. And we put that in the cassette player in the car and drive around the park, and it kind of like told you all the history. So yeah.
I assumed you were there every weekend and you took a field trip there every year.
No, did not, but I recommend it. It's like it's a really cool place. You can still see like bullet holes in walls and cannonball holes in buildings and stuff. It's really cool.
Wow. Yeah. You know what? I grew up in South Dakota. I've only been to Mount Rushmore once. So same thing.
Yeah. Same thing.
All right. That brings us to the end of this week's show. Phil, let's get some final feedback from the chat.
Yeah. I think people were just asking Stephen Randall questions live in the chat.
Oh, perfect.
So we don't have a lot, but we've got a few. Jude says that he shot his first deer while listening to MeatEater Radio live.
Hell yeah.
Thanks.
Today?
We learned a lot. I don't think it was today, but I would guess recently.
Okay.
So congrats, Jude. The proof is in the pudding.
Jude.
Let's see. Wapiti Woods says, Spencer, is it specifically Ham Special Light that you love so much? Just bought a 6-pack of original hams up in Rogers, Minnesota. Curious your thoughts of Ham's original, Ham's Heavy.
My origin story with Ham Special Light. It was the cheapest beer that you could buy at Hy-Vee. It was $11.99 for a 30-pack. And so when I'm an underage high schooler and I got to send one of the college kids I know there to buy me, I got to send a $12 bill. And that'll get me a whole 30-pack of Ham Special Light. The other thing is, Ham's has a reputation of just not tasting good. Ham Special Light was like a classic American light lager, like a Busch Light or a Coors Light tasting thing. But because it said Ham's on the can, nobody would touch it when you go to a party. Like I didn't have to worry about my 30-rack of Ham Special Light walking away.
Nice.
It was the cheapest beer. It was the beer that was least likely to be stolen. So that was my origin story of Ham Special Light. It's not really about the taste. It's just like the nostalgia of it, that it's just what I've always drank.
And the light is discontinued now, right?
Discontinued.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm hoarding my
Bummer.
I'm into my third to last case at
Oh.
this point.
Colin asked what you're switching to when your special light is all gone.
I'm not loyal to anybody. So you know, I might be sitting at the bar one time. And
So
order a
breweries
Busch
pay
Light,
attention,
and then
you know.
a Coors Light.
Hit him up on and slide into his DMs.
Miller Light does not matter.
Okay. Question for Seth from Eric: what is your favorite kind of hunt to film or
question,
photograph?
That is a good one. Well, a lot of my favorite photographs come from Southeast Alaska, which. Oh, we got Steve Ranella.
Oh, get over here.
Steve, we got 5 more minutes.
You want to come? You can go sit next to Seth if you want to.
Seth was just talking about his favorite hunts to capture through a camera.
Yeah, and I was saying some of my favorite, like one of my favorite places to photograph Southeast Alaska, because everything about it's cool and pretty. But the big Alaska hunts, like that Dull Sheep hunt, the photos I showed earlier, and then the moose stuff is always cool to photograph.
Yeah. Steve, you have any live feedback from today's show?
Seems like it's going great, man.
Okay, seems like it's going great.
The boys are running over time.
Yeah,
because
well,
we're supposed to be doing some homework right now.
Schedule. We're live.
Phil had mentioned that Steve and Randall were in the chat. If you go back and watch this when it's not live, you'll get to see the whole chat replay. So if you're curious what Randall and Steve were talking about for the last hour, you'll just get to read their comments there on YouTube.
Cool. We'll just we are over time. So last question, because now that Steve walked into the room as well, Henry's asking, how's that beaver season coming along, Seth? And Steve, you can.
I haven't set a beaver trap yet, but
all right.
No, I've got a couple, but I haven't gotten real hardcore into it yet.
All right.
I got a few.
I like trapping beavers in the spring when they're real active.
Yeah. That's a lot of fun. I'll get out there in the spring.
Yeah.
Last thing before we get out of here, the MeatEater Movie Club returns next week. Randall and crew will be reviewing the 1988 movie The Bear, which you can stream on Amazon, Tubi, or Pluto. Make sure you watch it before the next episode if you want to join in on the discussion. All right, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys back here next week.
Bye, suckers.